So we could just start talking about that now. When I showed up, I had been researching like chocolate beans and the way they like the cacao industry and all that, and how some of those workers are like kind of exploited. Like if their crop doesn't do well for a year, like they're not going to do well financially, and they're really going to struggle. I think we don't like fully grasp like what actually struggling is, especially in Africa where a lot of those like cacao beans are grown. And you talked a little bit about the same thing with coffee beans. Could you like restate some of that?
So historically, people think, oh, coffee, that's cheap, nickel a cup of coffee, right?
Yeah.
No, that's because coffee in the past, colonialism exploited coffee farmers, and now that I have to say it out loud, I can't. So you hear the term coffee plantation a lot, and that's for a reason, because a lot of coffee was grown with slave labor.
Right.
And then now that it's getting better, there are people who own their own farms, but they're still paid pennies on the dollar for their coffee. And specialty coffee is supposed to be. I buy from importers that have supposedly met the farmers, paid them a fair wage, inspected the farms, and all of my coffee is not organic, but a lot of it is, because that's a very expensive designation to get for the farmer. But specialty coffee is more expensive because the farmer's been paid a fair wage, and also it's coffee that's been grown at higher elevation, hand-picked, taken care of, and coffee that's grown at a higher elevation more slowly is a denser coffee bean, and it has more flavor.
What did you say the other day? Like a coffee bean takes 4 years?
A coffee
plant.
A coffee tree.
Coffee tree.
Yeah,
okay.
when you from seedling to the time it can produce cherries, it varies by region and variety, but 3 or 4 years for a plant to mature. So if a crop gets wiped out, whether it's from climate reasons or whatever, you don't just replant and try again next year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So big farms obviously have got nurseries, and they've got things in stages ready to go. But
like the average farmer, like if your coffee tree, you're out of coffee for 4 years, right? Until that tree like begins to mature, that tree's got to grow.
We got to plant. Yeah, you got to plant.
Yeah.
So coffee is a tropical plant. It grows close to the equator.
Yep.
It needs no freezing, but it prefers high altitude and cool climate.
Yeah.
And so that you can't do that in the U.S. because you're not growing coffee in Colorado.
Unless it's in a I showed up a couple days ago, and I was like, well, why don't we grow it in Colorado? Because she's like, cooler temperatures and high elevation. I was like, Colorado's really high elevation, and they have cool temperatures. And she's like, it needs to be tropical, like not that cold. I was like,
frozen coffee.
Frozen coffee.
Yeah, that's where you get cold brew.
Yeah, nitro cold brews from Colorado. No, that's crazy. You showed me like a graph of like the whole coffee system. Could you pull out your graph again? You're
graph?
like, not the graph.
My poster?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, my very high tech poster. Where do you want me to put this?
Yeah.
Right here?
We'll probably take a picture of it later too.
So I'll just lay it down then. So coffee is the seed of a fruit. And I think over the years it's been called a coffee bean because once it's roasted, it looks kind of like a kidney bean or something, or a black bean. But coffee is a tree. It's a plant, and the coffee cherries grow along the limbs of the coffee tree, and they are hand picked. They are the best, the coffee I'm buying, especially coffee, is grown on a hillside, usually in the shade. And so individuals are carrying baskets up and down the hills, hand picking the ripe cherries. They don't all ripen at the same time. Some big commercial farms that are kind of lower elevation where you can get some equipment in there will go and just strip those limbs, and you get ripe and unripe beans all mixed together. Because once you've removed the skin, you can't tell.
Right.
So good quality coffee is hand picked, and without bees there will be no coffee. So bees are in danger right now. So anyway, that's another issue. But coffee's a fruit. It grows on a tree. We pick the cherries, and most of the coffee you drink is called washed coffee.
Okay.
So you pick the cherries and you remove the skin and this pulp. It is a fruit, but it's not like an apple. There's not really much you can do with that fruit. There's such a little bit of it. But you wash all of that off, whether it's anyway, you wash all that off, and there's different ways to do that. And then you dry the seeds out in the sun, and there's men going in. So somebody had to touch those cherries, and then somebody had to wash those cherries. And then now this guy or person, somebody has to dry the cherries, and they're raking it several times a day. And then they have to package it up and get it to a shipping station, export station. And it comes on a ship across the ocean to the United States and goes to an import station. And then they put it on a truck, and it gets shipped to me. And then I roast it. And then I truck it over to a coffee shop, and they brew it.
Yeah.
There's so many hands have touched that coffee before you ever get your cup of coffee.
Right.
And for everyone to be paid fairly, that stuff's expensive.
Yeah. Like $7 is kind of cheap. So.
I mean, 10 cents for a cup of coffee never should have been the thing.
Right.
And so, and nobody pays that anymore. That's, from
That's
ancient
time
times.
ago.
But so paying for good coffee is a luxury. It's a luxury, and not everyone can do that. And but everyone needs to understand that coffee isn't cheap.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of people to get that coffee into your cup.
This is really good, by the way.
Oh,
what did
thank
you
you.
say this was?
Costa Rica.
Costa Rica. It's premium.
Thank you.
Very premium. Well, you started all of this in 2018, right? Can you tell us like a little bit about your story of starting Friday Coffee Roasters?
So this facility was set up by somebody else, and he had, I think, been roasting at home, and this was a carport. And he finished it out and created this roastery, and then he died tragically in an accident, and that was in December of 2017. And and in May, my youngest graduated high school. I'd been playing around with roasting coffee at home, and Kevin, the man who owned this, his grown kids didn't want to move back here and run it. So my husband and I, we made an offer on it, and I just jumped feet first. At home, I was roasting on a hot air popcorn popper. You can roast a handful of green coffee in a hot air popcorn popper.
Really?
You can burn coffee in a hot air popcorn popper.
Okay.
Roasting coffee is easy. You just apply heat to the bean and turn it brown, and you've roasted coffee. Now, to roast it consistently takes some practice. Takes a lot of practice, and then I have some monitoring equipment, so I can monitor during the roast. Not everyone. You don't have to have that. Once you know what you're doing, you can. There's sound and smell, whatever sound and scent. That'll give you clues, But having the monitoring software makes it a lot easier.
Definitely.
So once you get a profile you like, then you can repeat that.
You can get the consistency.
So for wholesale clients, they demand, they're like, I want this. I don't want this to be different every time. Now that being said, it is a plant, and each, just like any other plant product, there's gonna be some slight variations from batch to batch, but
Very cool. I was wondering if you could give us like a little tour of walk us through the process from getting the beans all the way to shipping it over to one of your clients. Walk us through how does that process work?
Okay, so starting with when I order coffee, like I said, I haven't made any origin trips yet. I would love to, but a lot of COVID and lots of other things. I grew during COVID, and then once it was time to, once we could all travel again, I was too busy to travel. But so I use importers. There's hundreds of importing companies. So they talk to the farmers, they get it here, and there's several giant warehouses around the country that lots and lots of importers use. So I've learned to deal with the ones that use the Houston warehouse, just because it's cheaper shipping for me to get it from the warehouse here. But that being said, there's still several different importing companies I have relationships with. So I go to their website and see what's available. And there's some things that I've been buying the same thing for 7 years, and then I'll throw something new in there every once in a while. So I call them, and usually within a week I can get a pallet delivered here. So I'm buying pallets at a time, not containers. You may have heard the term container. Big companies are buying a shipping container's worth of coffee is like a whole year's worth of coffee for me, or maybe even more. I don't have room to store all that. So I get about monthly deliveries of coffee. Of 10 bags of coffee, 1,500 pound pallets come in here.
Can you show us one of those bags?
Almost once a month. So the coffee gets delivered on a pallet, and I don't have any right now, but they bring the pallet in for me. And then my system is I get someone to lift all those bags up here onto the shelf, and with the opening end on the end, and then these bins all have one each of the different coffees I have.
Yeah.
I've got coffee from all these different countries, and so they all have a slightly different flavor profile. It's all coffee. It's like wine.
Right.
There's just these subtle notes, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So everybody on the planet likes something different. So everybody, I don't have a favorite coffee. There's not a best coffee. They're all just different.
Right.
So so I have, these are my backup bags here. And then in these bins, just because since I have so many, I have them in these rolly bins so I can move them around and get to the origin I'm ready to roast at any given time. So this happens to be coffee from Mexico. Yeah. So this is the green coffee. You can touch that. It's going to get roasted in a 400 degree oven. It's just. So that's the coffee seed.
Yeah.
Really, we should be calling. So you could plant this.
Coffee seeds. I've just never thought of coffee as a fruit. Like,
I know. I don't think you
I
think
feel
of that.
so dumb now. That's like, oh yeah, well,
nobody
obviously
does.
it's a fruit.
There's some people who are like, oh,
it's a fruit. Yeah.
You think of it's like probably bark or something.
I've never heard of the term like coffee cherries. Like, oh.
I know that was so weird. I was like, what?
Right.
Yeah, coffee cherry.
Yeah.
So this is plant matter. So when I take this and roast it in the roaster, these individual seeds, as they heat, they're going to expand, and the moisture is going to be driven out. So I can roast anywhere from 5 pounds to 15 pounds at a time on this roaster. That's end roast. Yeah. When I put coffee in, these seeds get roasted, they expand, water's driven out, and when I'm done, I have less weight. So if I put 18 pounds in, I'm getting 15 pounds of roasted coffee.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
how many different places do you like get it from? Because I see so many different labels. Do you know like about how many?
I've got 12 different countries.
12 different countries.
We got this one's Mexico. One behind you's Kenya.
Colombia,
Ethiopia. Guatemala looks like maybe
Brazil, Guatemala,
Wow.
Costa Rica. You're drinking that.
Costa Rica's good.
Peru, Sumatra. Sumatra is in Indonesia. Most of the time you refer to the country of origin, but Indonesia is a series of islands, and each island has its own kind of tends to have a different profile.
Yeah.
So Java is also Indonesia. So Sumatra is one of the islands of Indonesia. So it's really Indonesian, but in that case, everyone refers to the island Java, Sumatra, and there's another one that I've never had before called Sulawesi or something like that.
Question. This is all a fruit. What if we took like a, I don't know.
Well, these are seeds.
These are seeds. My bad. I'm still thinking on like coffee cherry land. Can we like roast other like seeds and get like anything else like a coffee or?
Oh, good question. Well, cacao. You can grind up cacao and drink it.
Right.
You don't have to make like sugary hot chocolate out of cacao. You can grind it and brew it with hot water and not.
I don't know if you know the answer to this, but like, why did we choose this exact seed to start roasting?
Kaldi and his goats, a gazillion years ago.
Have you heard of? This is gonna be so off topic, but have you heard of the coffee beans that like elephants will eat? They digest it and then poop it out.
We've got elephants doing it now. Oh.
And they'll like brew them.
Clean them up and roast them and brew them.
Yeah.
So you've heard of coffee luwak?
No.
There's some in Sumatra. Somebody discovered these little rodents would eat the cherries that have fallen off the trees in the ground, and then they noticed seeds are left behind. That's how seeds are dispersed, and they would wash them off and roast them, and they said, "Oh, it's so much smoother."
No, that's gross.
Coffee luwak. Originally, that's a legitimate claim. I don't believe it. I think it's a marketing scheme, but don't buy it. Now there's so many people that have these poor little animals trapped in cages and they're forced to eat cherries to try and sell this coffee at exorbitant rates.
That's terrible.
And there's no way to know who's doing it legitimately and who's. So I will never buy that. Because people have ruined it. I'm like, really.
It's not going to change the coffee a whole lot, right?
So when you harvest the coffee cherries, if you can have some high-powered washing equipment and get that stuff off quickly, or most farmers don't have the money for that equipment, so they have these big vats of water, and you dump the cherries in there and let them ferment a little bit. So it kind of, so we're talking a day or two, so that loosens and then it's much easier to wash off.
Oh my gosh.
farmers have experimented with extending that fermenting process and like throwing some mangoes in there. And so when you ferment the coffee seed, you can alter the flavor of the end result.
Yeah.
There's some subtle ways to do that, and then some people have started just really going wild and fermenting for a week or something, and the coffee, when you roast it and brew it, it's like, okay,
I can
that's
really
different.
taste that mango.
It's real fermented flavor, and it's legitimate. I appreciate it. It's not my thing, and it's just like any other industry, they're trying new things.
There's
like, hey, what if
things,
we do this? What if we do this? This is new and different, and we can charge more because we did this extra process to it. So that being said, sitting in the gut of an elephant for 12 hours, I think would legitimately make some difference. But
interesting. Okay.
Is it good? Is it bad? Is it noticeable?
Yeah. We'll never know.
I don't know.
I don't really want to try it.
I hadn't heard about the elephant one.
Okay.
So,
okay.
but the Luwak, coffee Luwak, what's civet? They almost called it a civet. That's right. But they call it Kopi Luwak for some reason.
Okay.
I'm never buying that.
Okay.
Because unless I collected it myself. And
Yeah.
And that would be anyway. Sorry, we're getting off.
No, you're good.
Off topic.
You're good.
But no, you can alter the flavor of the end coffee by what you do to the seed.
Okay.
So I told you why most of the coffee drink is washed, so you can harvest the cherries and just dry the whole cherry out in the sun like a raisin.
Wow.
And that's called natural processed coffee. So in places like that don't have a lot of water, so washed processed coffee needs a lot of water. So in Yemen and Ethiopia and stuff, the natural process is very common because they don't have enough water to do that. So you just dry it like a raisin. You have to do all the raking and everything. And then once the skin has dried, you mill it off.
Right. Yeah.
And I have had some wonderful natural processed coffees. My Honduras coffee, it tastes almost like fruit juice when I get it just right. It's so good. And then there's other natural processed coffees that's like it's barely different. So some purists consider that to be altering the flavor of the seed of the coffee.
Interesting.
So
I don't know if we can talk about this on the pod, but so you buy pallets of these, right? So how much would a single bag cost?
Well, right now the prices have doubled this year.
Oh.
I went from paying between $2 and $3 a pound. So all the origins are different, and all the farms are different, and it depends on whether it's a micro lot, that's more, or if it's a bigger lot, you can get it for less. But since I started this business, it's gone way up. But this year, there was a freak freeze in Brazil, followed by a drought. Brazil's the highest producing coffee country, followed by Vietnam. I've never had Vietnamese coffee, but apparently, and they've had a huge drought. So when the climate in those countries is affected, it ripples through the whole industry.
Totally.
And so coffee this year has just shot up. It has almost doubled. So I'm having to have a conversation with my wholesale client.
That makes you raise your price.
I haven't yet. I was absorbing it until this last month. It just, I'm like, guys, I can't.
Wow.
I have to. But so the bags are different. So a lot of the bags are 130 pounds, and then Colombia and Mexico are 150 pounds green.
Yeah.
And the prices, I was paying between $2 and $3.
Okay.
$2 is when I first started. Between $3 and $4
dollars
usually.
Usually.
It's over $5 now.
Oh my goodness.
Per pound.
Holy cow.
So,
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
This is one expensive hobby.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Well, it's not a hobby.
It's not a hobby anymore. We're not in the kitchen roasting
So
beans,
yeah,
but-
no, it's super. Nobody's making money in coffee. So then
Right.
so I've got to raise my rates. So then the coffee shops have to raise their rates.
Two
And everybody's
Rivers.
already complaining about But then tourists, they got to sell coffee. They've got to pay their baristas and buy cups and
All the things.
syrups and
Yeah.
most
Wow.
of it. I can run this mostly myself. I've got 2 part-time employees.
What's up, Garrett? I don't know if you're watching, but Garrett works here.
Garrett
so-
works here,
Yeah,
on Thursdays.
yeah.
He comes in and helps me. And he started out just sorting, but he can sort, roast, bag, deliver. He can do it all.
Garrett's going to have Garrett's coffee someday.
Yeah.
Garrett's coffee shop.
I'll just
go.
he can take over here. But yeah, every little step of the way.
Yeah.
And then gas,
Yeah.
so shipping's up.
Oh my
Plastic
gosh.
bag, the bags I put the coffee in, or not. Yeah,
Holy
everything.
cow. Oh
my goodness.
Everything just starts.
It
creeping
all
up.
adds up.
Yeah.
But at a coffee shop, payroll is their probably biggest expense.
yeah,
I don't have
totally.
one, but I'm like, they have so many people working there. Oh my
Right.
gosh.
Right.
So the way I'm able to absorb some of the
Yeah.
the prices are just, it's a commodity coffee. I don't buy commodity coffee, but the commodity price affects.
Could you explain commodity coffee?
I don't fully understand it myself, but
Okay,
you understand the
okay.
stock market, right? The
Yes,
stock market
yeah.
goes up and down. Well, there's some products that are commodities like wheat and I don't know, other grains. There's some that are bought and sold around the world, and there's like a basic. So for like the low level, there's like a commodity price. It's
Okay.
like the stock market,
Right.
and so that price, and people can buy and sell shares in coffee on the commodity market, and I
Yeah.
don't understand it, and I hate it. But so the commodity price just fluctuates daily.
Totally.
And so over the years, like it'll go up and it'll go down, and I can absorb.
Right.
You know,
Right.
this is just me, and when I started out at this rate, but then I got more customers, so I was selling
Right.
more, so I didn't have
Right.
to, like the first surge, I didn't have to increase my prices because I was selling more. And
Yeah.
but yeah, the coffee prices are affected by the stock market.
Totally.
Unfortunately, it's
Yeah.
dumb. I don't know why. I hate it. But the C market is the letter C, commodity
Okay,
market.
yeah.
Commodity coffee is like gas station coffee. There's
Right.
coffee grown in lower lands
Right.
and harvested with machinery, and
Right.
it's not as good a quality, but it's coffee. You know,
Yeah.
it'll do the job.
Yeah. So after you've unpackaged them and you've put them in their containers, where do the beans go after that?
So then I hand sort each batch. So
Okay.
I scoop onto that table and make, because
Yeah.
this is specialty coffee. It shouldn't have anything else in there.
But
you know, you saw they're dried on patios. So
Yeah.
rocks, sticks,
Right.
occasional like piece of a piece of corn or a black bean gets in there. They're subsistence farmers also. So
Yeah.
something will get blown in there.
Right.
That's not a big deal. Those would just get burned up in the roaster. But
Yeah.
a rock won't hurt my roaster, but it would mess up your grinder.
Oh, it would. Yeah.
So that's really bad.
Okay, this is a bit of a jump, but I see a decaf box over there. Is that process different? How does
So
that
I don't
work?
decaffeinate the coffee. Any coffee can be decaffeinated. So the importers bring it into the U.S. and decide which ones they want to have decaffeinated. And there's several companies around the world that do that. The big ones. Swiss Water Company is in Canada. So you import the beans, then decide what you want decaffeinated, and you ship them up or off to whatever company that does it, and they decaffeinate the beans. And a really super oversimplification is you take the green coffee, you soak it in water, and the caffeine is a crystal, so it leaches out and floats off, and you scoop it off and then re-dry the beans.
Interesting. I always wondered how that worked.
Yeah, so there's more to it than that, but that's
But
just kind of like a
basic.
visual. You can, you know, I can't. So like, but I can't do
Okay.
that.
So people will ship off to these bigger companies.
And
to
so
get that
decaf
done.
is actually more expensive than regular coffee
yeah.
because there's yet another step
Makes sense.
that
Makes sense.
goes into that. But yeah, there's Swiss water and there's ethyl acetate, and people get worried that sounds like a chemical. It's derived from sugar cane. It's really not that bad, but I buy, just to make people feel better, I buy the Swiss water processed coffee, decaf.
That's crazy. So much goes into coffee that you
Caffeine
wouldn't
and
know.
crystals. That's all I got out of that.
and freshly roasted decaf tastes great. It's coffee,
Yeah. Yeah.
and but it doesn't have the caffeine, so it depends on.
And you're paying more for it
And
Exactly.
it costs more.
Decaf costs more. Interesting.
because it's a longer process, which
Right.
you wouldn't think that
another
because
step.
most
Yeah.
people would want the caffeine.
And weird.
So
Weird.
so honestly, decaf drinkers are the true coffee lovers
Okay.
Hot
interesting.
take.
Hot take. If you
because they
drink
aren't
decaf,
in
you're
it for the
better.
caffeine.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Well, can you tell us like
Okay, so
About your
once we've
roaster.
sorted all the coffee, we sort them into, and here Garrett got me kind of prepped for next week. So we sort them into these jugs, buckets,
buckets? Yeah.
and there's a specific weight in each of these buckets,
Okay.
depending on the density of the bean and the size of the batch I want to do. So for Two Rivers, they're usually ordering at least 100 pounds. So I know so I'm like, just get me ready to get started next week. And so these are all 15-pound batches. Oh, I can put 18 in, but depending on the moisture level of the beans,
Right.
sometimes it does better at 15.
So this 15 will become 12 pounds?
12 and a half.
Okay. Okay.
Almost. Sometimes if it's a lighter roast, it'll be 13.
Okay. I got you. I got you.
So I decide how many pounds, and then I come over here and warm up the roaster. And so this is a gas-fired drum roaster.
Okay.
There's I use natural gas. I've got it plumbed in, from the city. So there's a flame down, well, you can't see right now, but underneath here is a flame. So this is a drum. So there's a, motor in the back turning this inner drum. You probably can't see it, but on that drum, there's fins that are, and so once I dump the coffee in it, it's tossing the coffee,
Right.
so it's not
Right.
resting on one spot,
Yeah.
on one side of the bean. So the coffee's turned brown through convection and conduction. So it's touching the metal, but there's also, it's all hot air. So it takes me about 45 minutes to
just warm it up.
warm it up, because
Yeah.
this is a lot of metal. You want everything the same
To be-
temperature.
yeah.
And also you want it the same every time you start a roast. So you don't want to start in a cold
Right.
oven. That roast
Right.
will take longer, and that'll
Inconsistent.
affect the flavor.
Yeah.
So the actual roasting of the coffee takes about 12 minutes.
Oh,
Wow, that's a lot faster than I thought it would be.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
And this is the software I was talking about.
Yeah.
So when I'm roasting, I call up a batch that I did before, so
Yeah.
you can kind of see a light gray line.
Yep.
That's the roast that I was like, okay, that one's pretty good.
Yeah.
And so I can go look at my notes. And I say, okay, I charged, we use the term charge and then
Yep.
drop, because
Yeah.
they're both going down, but you charge the drum with the green coffee,
Okay.
and then you drop it into the cooling tray. And so I looked at this, and it's like, okay, I charged it at 385 degrees, and then I made these airflow and temperature adjustments, and then I dropped it at 390. So this was a Costa Rica light roast here.
Wow.
And those temperatures work on this roaster.
Yeah.
Every roaster, you can't say, oh, 390 is a light roast.
Yeah.
If I roast a 390 on that little thing, it's going to burn it, kind of. Or especially, there's another kind of roaster called an air roaster, a fluid bed air roaster.
Oh, yeah,
Loring
yeah.
is real popular, and they're giant. You can roast 60
Yeah.
pounds at a time.
Oh.
And so the temperatures you're roasting at that,
Right.
it's the same idea, but I've just seen people in the roaster world talk about, well, this temperature is a light roast, this temperature is medium, this is dark. And they were talking about roasting to 450 degrees. It's like, it would be on fire if I roasted
Right.
450 degrees in there.
Right.
So you can't listen to those things. It's color of the bean and development time.
Yeah.
So that's also a roaster.
That is a 1
Yeah.
pound roaster, yes.
So what kind of coffee would you do in that versus this one?
So there's a lot of coffees I roast every week for a lot of people, and so the more big roasts I can do, the better. But if somebody orders 1 pound of Ethiopia dark roast,
Yeah.
I'll do it there, because I have an online store and I sell 1 pound at a time.
Yeah.
So if somebody's ordered something, 1 pound is something that I'm not roasting any more of, then I go and
You
do
can
it.
do a smaller batch.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's for on demand small
Right.
orders.
And for people who I don't know who watching this might not be super familiar with
Right,
coffee, would you
right.
explain kind of the different taste profiles of light, medium, and dark roasts?
Okay, so when you're roasting the coffee, the green coffee, it goes from green to when it's starting to actually the temperature has to equalize, and then once it goes from green, it goes to like yellow, and we call that yellow end or dry end. So when there's no more green, you mark that point. So from green, and then it starts to turn from light brown, it gets a little bit browner and a little bit browner, and then you hit a moment called first crack. And that's the point at which that moisture in the plant
Yeah.
material is being driven out, and the bean is physically expanding
Right,
to
right.
release that moisture.
Right.
So, and when you get to that point, it sounds like popcorn popping inside the roaster, and it's like the sound of popcorn
Right,
popping.
right.
It literally sounds like that inside the roaster. Once you hit first crack, you've roasted your coffee, and so that's a light roast. And then everything from then on is a spectrum. What I call light roast, somebody else might call medium roast.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you go from light roast to medium roast to dark roast. It's just the longer you leave it in
Right,
the roaster.
right.
So you can have light, medium, dark roast of any of the origins that I sell. There's more finesse to it, but
Right.
but basically the longer you leave it in, the darker the roast. I try to make that. If somebody wants dark roast, I want that to happen at 12 minutes, just like my medium and my light.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
finesse some things. But the easy answer is, the darker the roast, the longer I've left it
Okay.
Yeah.
in the oven,
Yeah.
in the roaster.
Wow.
And
Very-
the darker the roast, the less of the subtle flavor nuances you're going to taste. It's just going to taste like, and there's nothing wrong with dark roast, but you're just not going to get those flavor notes that are on the back of the bag. It's just, it's dark roast coffee.
So what would like most coffee shops use, or like Two Rivers, for example?
All
Is that
of
more
my
like a
wholesale
medium?
accounts use a medium roast for their espresso. So you do not have to use dark roast in espresso. You certainly can. That's the Italians. The typical Italian espresso is a dark roasted coffee.
Yeah.
But they were getting, way back when they were getting, 2-year-old coffee from Brazil. So you just roast the heck out of it, and you don't taste the defects. You don't taste the subtle nuances, but then you don't detect the defects as well either when the darker you roast it.
Right. Could you explain resting period for coffee? Because
Sure.
you were talking about 1 week is about perfect, or I don't remember.
Yeah, so once everything happens and I've got to the right temperature, and then while I'm roasting, I can check on the color of the coffee this is called a trier. So the coffee beans are leaping around in there, and I can pull out a few and look and see what the color's doing.
Wow. Okay.
And then once everything happens the way I want it to, then we cool it down. So you want it to cool down quickly, so it doesn't keep roasting. So I open this up, cool the coffee down in here.
Yeah.
And then while that's cooling, I get my settings back so I can go get ready for the next batch. And then I dump the coffee out into one of these bins.
Yep.
And after the coffee is roasted, light and medium roast coffees still have some CO2 trapped inside the coffee bean. And so it's actually, you want freshly roasted coffee. That's all roasters' mantra, freshly roasted coffee. And grind it right before you brew it. But you really don't want it the next day after it's been roasted, because you want to have a resting period for that CO2 to escape a little bit more. It won't hurt you. It's not harmful. It'll just create a little bit of an astringent quality to your coffee.
Okay.
Or sourness.
Right.
But if you brew it just right, that might not,
Right.
it's personal preference. Everything from after I roast it, or how somebody requests that I roast it. Then when we get to brewing, there's no limit to the options. But medium and light roast, you really want to let it rest for anywhere from several days to a week.
Several days to a week. Okay.
And
right
and for espresso, maybe even longer, because that when you freshly roasted coffee, when you grind it and do a pour over, have you ever watched them do a pour over?
I have.
So you see how the bed of coffee blooms when they first hit it with the hot water. That's the CO2 escaping.
Oh.
So in a pour over, that's great. It's fun to watch, and you can do that little bloom and wait and let that gas escape. Oh, let me turn this off. And but in a espresso puck, that's a tight little contained area, so you don't want a bunch of blooming going on inside that puck.
It's going to be a lot of pressure.
Imagine little microscopic air bubbles around each ground of coffee,
Oh gosh.
propelling the water, and then the extraction isn't as good.
Wow. There's so much to coffee, and I feel like everybody's like, oh yeah, coffee is you just put it in the machine and that's about it. And then you're talking about blooming and CO2.
Yeah, and espresso, you've got to have just the right grind. You got to tamp it right.
Right.
No, I don't do espresso. I have a machine, but I do a pour over. My go-to in the morning is a pour over.
Okay.
Or an automatic drip is that's a pour over basically. But the Two Rivers pour over, they finesse it. And, it tastes better than your Mr. Coffee, but Mr. Coffee is a pour over.
Yeah. Wow.
Hot water percolating down through the grounds in a paper filter.
So the beans then go out of cooling down. They go into the bins, and then you package them in something like this, right?
So I've got. They like the paper sacks, and they don't buy very many. But Two Rivers, we don't have them anymore. You saw the big 5-pound plastic bags, which I hate, but that's just the most efficient and effective way to do it. They buy so many, and they're piled on that shelf that would be a disaster. But if they fell over. But I package them up 5 pounds at a time, and then deliver them usually on Thursdays.
Okay.
Thursdays or Fridays.
And then this is 1 pound?
That is a half a pound.
Half pound, okay. And so this is just smaller quantity.
Yeah, I have a little display case at Crosswalk.
Okay.
And they sell little bags for me. I forgot to take them this week.
Oh, womp womp.
They've been closing early this week. I forgot, so they didn't get their coffee yesterday.
Those are the big plastic bags down there.
Oh
Right?
yeah,
Yeah.
this is a batch that went wrong. I'm hanging on to it because I need a new grinder. So that's a
That's 5 pounds.
That's a 5 pound. That's a 8 ounce.
Okay.
And
That's
this is
5 pound also.
5 pounds.
Isn't that,
Okay,
isn't that
cool.
wild? That's the same amount.
Huh.
This is more efficient,
Yeah.
but this is less spillable.
Right. Okay. Well, we can head back over here and we'll just talk more about the science of coffee. What were so you started in COVID or just before COVID?
Yeah. So I bought this place in the summer of 2018 and I got my first client, Crosswalk, in November of 2018.
Wow.
And so I was fortunate to be able to start very slow. I purposely started super slow and got them through a friend of my daughter who was working there and said, hey, they want to get some new coffee. And so I just was able to just dip my toe in and test the waters. And they knew I was just starting, so they were willing. They gave me a chance and were willing to work with me. And then I just slowly kind of started word of mouth and Google searches is how I've gotten all my customers. I've never advertised.
Wow.
So I started out really, really slow and started getting a few individual customers here and there. And I didn't even have my online store at first.
Wow.
Because I was like, I need to figure out what I'm doing
Yeah.
first.
Wow. I think so many people are just like, let me start out fast and big. And that's you're kind of setting yourself up for failure because what if you don't grow fast enough? And then you're just starting out slow and you're slowly progressing oh, I got another client, that's good. What do I need to do now in order to accommodate that? Starting slow is a lot better.
I got a great bit of advice when I first started, and people are like, "Oh, we got to grow your business. We got to get you an HEB." I was like, I don't even want to be in the grocery store, even if I do grow. But I was like, your business has to grow, right? And a friend of mine said, "Growth just for growth's sake is cancer." So
wow, yeah, that's
you have to have a purpose for why you're growing. And so I was like, well. My goal was to introduce specialty coffee to the people of Central Texas, and specifically New Braunfels. I'm not here to take over, and I can't provide all the coffee for everyone in New Braunfels, even if I wanted to. Even if they wanted me to, no, I can't. So I just wanted to introduce the concept of specialty coffee and freshly roasted and local. Support your local small business. Buy freshly roasted coffee. Get a grinder. Please get a grinder and grind it before you brew it. It tastes so much better. And just see how people reacted. And like I said, I was fortunate enough to be able to do this slowly. I wasn't feeding my family with this. It is a business, though. I mean, I do have to pay the mortgage and the rent and buy all the supplies and all that. So it's not a hobby out of my kitchen, but it's I'm not. I don't have the stress of raising a family on this.
Right.
This town is growing so much that this could be grown to the point where it could, be really, really big.
HEB.
No, it could. I don't go and do farmers markets or anything because it's exhausting and it's just me. But if I got to the point where I could turn that front area there into a little tiny retail facility.
Is that something you're interested in, doing that?
I'm at that tipping point right now. I have to decide: do I stay? Do I maintain the status quo? Do I grow? But I'd have to have employees, to be here, to just be hanging out. If I were going to put up hours, because there's that sad little sign on my door that I need to reprint. Says hours vary, call this number. So I've never committed to retail hours because on the wholesale, on the manufacturing side, I get my orders at the beginning of the week. As long as I deliver my product to my customer on time, doesn't matter what time I'm in here doing it. And even though I'm in the coffee industry, I'm a night owl. I'm not a morning person. So no, I will never run a coffee shop myself. I don't want to be here at 5 a.m. But I'm kind of grappling with that right now. I'm like, okay, do we grow? Do we grow and be a household name?
Yeah.
Or I kind of like the speakeasy feature right now. Like I don't even have a sign out in the street. Like
Exactly.
you got to know where I am.
Yeah, I would.
So all word of mouth and just like, hey, have this insider deal on some coffee.
I remember pulling up the first time I was here, and I was like, am I at the right spot? Like, I can't quite tell. I also think like having not expanding, there's also like you have very little expectation compared to having employees, having signs, like getting bigger and bigger. I feel like the culture is like you always have to get bigger, right? Like that's the sign of a successful business. But I also think like the sign of a successful business is kind of like maintaining what you have and not striving for like a bigger paycheck, like a bigger warehouse or like more employees. I think it's really cool. You're just like, you're kind of comfortable.
Yeah, whenever I was younger, I said, I don't know what I want to do, but I just want to be respected by my peers in what I do. And so I've met a few people in the industry, and I don't know if I have their respect or not, but they're, but they're, they talk to me when we go to events, and I've got repeat customers. And I've grown out of the imposter syndrome finally. I'm like,
That's good.
I had a bunch of instincts early on, and I didn't know if they were right or not. Now I'm like, I was right. That was the right instinct. One of them is go slow. I'd rather be an exclusive brand that that you kind of have to. I'd rather be exclusive.
You got to be in
than
the club, right? You got to be in the club. Okay.
You got into the secret
I also
handshake.
feel like if you're exclusive, you have a much more loyal fan base, or like much more loyal companies who are like customers that are willing to return, instead of just like if you're an HEB, it's kind of like I could go with Friday Coffee Roasters or whatever Pete's Coffee just made. So if you're in the club, like what's up, like it's the cool kids club. So Brody's dying over there. Well, anything else we should know? Anything else that we skipped out on?
Oh, I think we covered just about all of it.
About all of it. Okay, very cool.
Yeah. So I have an online store, but I work in the middle of the week. I'm called Friday Coffee Roasters, but I'm closed on Friday.
How did the name come about?
So when my kids were little, there was a group of us moms. We used to kind of randomly, sporadically try to get together here and there. And somebody said, let's just meet on Fridays for coffee. And Crosswalk Coffee House used to be on the corner where New Braunfels Coffee is now. And we said, just every Friday at 10 o'clock, wherever it's available, or 9 or whatever it was, just if you feel like it, go to Crosswalk. And you might be the only one, or there might be 8.
Right.
And so there was just kind of a little group. We all stayed in touch, and we'd get together at the end of the week and talk about our week and our trials and tribulations and successes and failures, and gripe about our kids. Our kid, all these kids are all in their 20s or beyond now. And over time, it kind of, some people moved, and one woman died, and we all it kind of fell apart a little bit. There's a couple of us that still kind of hang in there. But when I bought this place, and I was struggling for a name. I forget, one of them said, "What about Friday Coffee?" I was like, because my daughter said, "Y'all are the Friday Coffee moms." Yeah, exactly. And so it kind of between my daughter and one of the friends said, "Call it that." Naming a business is hard, unless it's Smith and Sons or something. Unless it's after your name, then it's tricky.
Well, applications to work here will be in the description. She's gonna start hiring. We're gonna have hours out there. So
I need people to clean up. I need to come and clean up around here.
Yeah, we'll be open on Fridays now, roasting all week round. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
That was super fun.
That was so good.
Learning all the coffee things is like, my Josh brain is like, wow, we have coffee from Mexico here, and it's just all really cool. So, perfect. Thank you. We do this really weird thing at the end of the podcast where we all say deuces. Would you say deuces with
Deuces?
us? Yeah. I don't know. There's another person on the team, and it was like her idea. She's like, what if we said deuces?
Okay.
So, yeah.
And it's stuck.
So
I gotta go like this and say deuces?
Yeah. All right, 3, 2, 1.
Deuces.